Hello, everyone. Today we are here to, we have someone coming in. Wonderful. Today we are here to talk about fiscal sponsorship and movement organizing. It is something that people don't really know a lot of history about, and there's a very unique way that we organize our fiscal sponsorship program. We actually identify it more as an incubator. So let's get started. So before we start, I want to review some resource sharing and accessibility and agenda notes for everyone. First, subtitles are available via a button on the lower bar of your Zoom so that you can press to get real-time subtitles. I'll also be pausing in between points to allow folks to process. This is generally helpful for folks with unseen disabilities in the cognitive and developmental category. There will be a glossary of terms in a light green area at the bottom of the slides. I won't necessarily read them, but they are there for your convenience and reference. Finally, I have an agenda that is helpful to know what's coming up and the general flow of the presentation. It'll also clearly note when questions can be asked and answered. Resource sharing. Please share any resources or knowledge that you have in the chat. We are happy to interact, to respond to ideas that you have. We are the staff, the whole staff, most of the staff is here, so we're happy to engage. I want to note that we have a fundraising handbook that is coming out in May. That will be a comprehensive handbook describing different kinds of individual, foundation, and corporate giving, and provide some tips and tricks. It is generally geared toward arts as economic development. So this will be an opportunity to try to diversify the ways that you raise funds. It will be available on our website and downloadable. So this is going to be our agenda for today. We're doing this introduction section. It is 5 slides. We have a section on what is fiscal sponsorship. Then we're going to go into a short history of fiscal sponsorship. We're going to review the models that are currently available. Then we're going to go into the meat of it, the movement incubation piece of fiscal sponsorship. We're going to end with the upcoming activities with ABC and a Q&A session. There will be 22 total slides. So first, to level set, we are Arts Business Collaborative. I am the founder and CEO. Our mission is to improve the quality of life for people of color through the arts and STEM. Our services combat 3 factors that harm creative and professional endeavors: access to capital, networks, and knowledge. We have 2 main programs. One is Help Desk, which you are attending now, which is a free program. We provide one-on-one consulting, asynchronous learning through creative study. We'll be sending more information about that. And we provide capacity grants in addition to these webinars. Then we have our Grassroots Action Project that is an incubator for nascent organizations and businesses involved in movement organizing to develop the capability to exist as individuals. We as ABC exist as the backbone of movements and we leverage fiscal sponsorship as a tool within our larger program. As I said, we are an incubator. So this is me. As I said, I am the founder of Arts Business Collaborative. Um, I work with 40 to 80 entrepreneurs and artists annually to develop business plans, navigate funding, and build business models. I am the co-founder of BLX Alternative, which is a community organization focusing on reducing shame and stigma associated with alternative relationships. It is a fiscally sponsored project. I am also the president of the board of the Effing Foundation for Sex Positivity, a grant-making organization that's challenging traditional understandings of sexuality, gender, and the body. They are a grant maker. And I am finally the founder and CEO of Black Cultural Capital, which is a consulting firm that centers Black queer creators, and that is a for-profit. So all that is to say, I have been on all sides of fiscal sponsorship, a sponsoring organization, a sponsor project, and a funder making grants to a sponsor project. The through line of my work is that I'm an advocate for LGBTQ plus cultural production, and I connect movement organizers and organizations to funding and prepare them to build institutional power that will last beyond the lifespan of the founder. I believe in strong institutions, so I created ABC to support institution building. I also built it out of rage because as a newly minted arts graduate, I had zero training in managing a small business and learned very quickly that to be an artist is to be a business owner. So we should start at the very beginning. What is fiscal sponsorship? Fiscal sponsorship is when a nonprofit extends their tax exempt status to a project that's doing work related to that organization's mission. There is a contract, there's usually fees, and it makes it possible for those organizations to receive not-for-profit funds. There are a lot of ways that are reasons that people would want to get fiscal sponsorship. There is an anticipated short lifespan of the program or of the project. Maybe you want to do an annual festival and it only exists for a short period of time, and then you sort of go back to your life. That would be a good reason for fiscal sponsorship. Improve access to funding for public benefit activities, increase credibility, low cost or replacement financial and administrative services, especially through a Model A fiscal sponsorship, and to avoid the compliance maintenance of a 501c3 while benefiting from the status. Actually, I recently attended a conference that had a session on fiscal sponsorship, and someone made a great point about the use of fiscal sponsorship to protect organizations and their assets from being targeted by the government. Under a fiscal sponsor, your project is not submitting the nonprofit tax return, the 990, so you can fly under the radar from government attention. This can be helpful for organizations led by and serving marginalized communities and their funders. There are also some not great reasons to seek fiscal sponsorship, in my opinion, just my opinion. One is when folks actively dislike nonprofits and common nonprofit culture traps. The nonprofit industrial complex is real and it is trash. It can eat up the labor of well-meaning people and expect them to have the mission as part of their pay. It is often the site of widespread racial discrimination and covert narcissism, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor. This is just my opinion. It kind of boils down to how people structure the money and power within an organization. There are more and less oppressive ways to allocate resources, but often you have to be in it. You have to be it being the nonprofit complex to learn how to cultivate a better environment. Your fiscal sponsor is there to help you, and unfortunately, contempt does not make that relationship more fruitful. Speaking from the experience of both a fiscal sponsor and a sponsored project, compliance can be really, really frustrating. It is, however, the price everyone pays to ensure your movement organization can continue receiving tax advantage funds to do this work. And it is also how fiscal sponsors manage the very real risk that they take on to support you. I lost my place. One moment. Okay. So this is fiscal sponsorship models at a glance. There are a lot of them, and this is very small. I will be happy to send the presentation to anyone after the presentation. There are lots of ways liabilities, donations, returns, and tax returns, and ownership are determined. And you can look through each one to see the relevant information about all of them. This is outlined in a book called Fiscal Sponsorship: 6 Ways to Do It Right. This is the preeminent book on fiscal sponsorship. I've read it many times. My staff has read it. We look to it in many ways to figure out how we support a project in the unique ways that they need to be supported. And here are some general rules, no matter the model. Any entity with 501c3 status can be a fiscal sponsor. Some people do it outside the confines of an organized program with outcomes which I would not recommend, but sometimes people do it. There must be a legally binding agreement with the project. I would suggest you consult an attorney with experience in fiscal sponsorship to make sure the contract reflects what you discussed and the model that you want. The 501c3 holder has to control the money. The project partner has to align with the 501c3 holder's mission. If the nonprofit adds partners outside of their mission, the fees associated with that could be considered unrelated business income, which is taxable. Again, I'm not an attorney, so you should consult with an attorney. In any case, you might be rejected for partnership because your project is too far outside of the organization's mission, which has no bearing on the quality of your project. It's just compliance. Let's get into history. And I want to note again that our program is so much more than fiscal sponsorship, but identifying as a fiscal sponsor is sometimes easier to communicate and helps bring to the fore the critical movement organizing history of fiscal sponsorship. So it all kind of starts with the IRS. Um, Again, I'm going to do another disclaimer. I am not an attorney. I have just been studying this since 2019 to build ABC's Grassroots Action Project Incubator. And I read that book. So there we are. In 1883, Russell versus Allen Supreme Court case determined that federal tax law requires the beneficiaries of a charitable contribution to be indefinite, the intended activities and services available to all. This is where the idea of public benefit comes from, and private inurement, so private benefit. Charitable contributions are indefinitely serving the public good. In 1954, the Internal Revenue Code 501c3 is born. This is the modern basis for tax exemption. Organizations organized and operated for religious, charitable, scientific, testing for public safety, literary or educational purposes, or for the prevention or cruelty to the prevention of cruelty to children or animals. In 1959, the Massachusetts Health Research Institute, which rebranded into Third Sector New England, which goes by TSNE Mission Works, is incorporated as the first fiscal sponsor. They are widely understood as the first fiscal sponsor. They were the home of the 1960s civil rights fundraising and movement organizing, and continue to sponsor majority civil rights and advocacy organizations to this day. They also have many partners who are food justice, agriculture, and nutrition focused as well. In 1963, the IRS defines tax deductibility. The IRS ruled literally on January 1st. It established that a donation is not tax deductible unless the recipient is a charity. It declares that when a charity acts only as a conduit or establishes a pass-through arrangement to receive a donation earmarked for a non-charity, that arrangement will result in the loss of tax deduction for the donor. So all this is to say that this is why when people say, oh, fiscal sponsorship, does that mean a fiscal manager or a fiscal agent? No, those are not appropriate for what fiscal sponsorship is. And as the author of the 6 Ways to Do It Right book, Adler and Colvin, the law firm, they say care needs to be taken in setting up a Model C sponsorship in order to properly preserve the sponsor's discretion and control over project funds and avoid earmarking contributions for the project grantee. In 1966, the IRS made Model C as a real thing, meaning that there's a regranting relationship. So they approved funds solicited for and regranted to a foreign charity for a specific project as tax deductible if the U.S. charity exercises discretion and control, which ensures that those funds are used to carry out the charity's function and purposes. There are many models of fiscal sponsorship that become possible with each subsequent IRS rule, which we will review later. In 1973, Silk, Adler, and Colvin was formed. As I said, the foremost legal practice on fiscal sponsorship. It's now called Adler and Colvin. So this was actually opened by Tom Silk. He opens a law practice in San Francisco and develops early theories of proper fiscal sponsorship under federal tax law by providing advice and representation in IRS controversies. His firm grew into Silk, Adler, and Colvin. In 1993, the book that I have referenced maybe 4 or 5 times already is published by San Francisco Study Center Press. The book comprehensively explains why fiscal agent mislabels the funder-sponsor project relationship. The change in nomenclature transforms the field and helps professionalize the practice of fiscal sponsorship. By the way, this book was grant funded and is, as far as I know, the only comprehensive book on fiscal sponsorship models. From 2003 to 2004, the Tides Foundation studied fiscal sponsorship as a means of nonprofit innovation. And with 8 fiscal sponsors, they create the national network of fiscal sponsors. We were actually recently highlighted by the National Network of Fiscal Sponsors and attended the conference, I believe, 2 years ago as one of maybe 10 equity sponsors, i.e. led and governed by people of color. And for context, there are hundreds of fiscal sponsors across the country. The fact that there are so few of us is striking. So then in 2011, the Model L is born. This is actually an article on the birth of the Model L, which was actually created or discussed as a proposal at a attorneys meetup in San Francisco. So that's kind of interesting that it was kind of created in that way. The description of the new Model L is published. In this model, the fiscal sponsor acts as the sole member of an LLC, a limited liability company, and the project is operated from within the separate entity. If properly done, the sponsor should have no liability for the LLC's debts and obligations. And then in 2017, the Model L is actually clarified to make more sense with IRS guidance. So following this new guidance, Adler and Colvin wrote an updated article to their original idea. The IRS explicitly said that single member LLCs owned by the sponsor can receive charitable contributions directly as they are a disregarded entity for federal purposes. This, if anyone has an LLC as a single member, has a single member LLC, this is the case for individuals if you have it for a for-profit business. But now it was confirmed in writing that it would work for nonprofits as well. And this opens a lot of options for partners to have more operational independence and ability to respond to their community faster because they have access to their bank account directly. I'll be talking about the actual models next so we can get on the same page about common models and what this actually means for the movement organization's experience. The models. We now have some understanding of how the US tax law and IRS rules intersected to create the opportunity for fiscal sponsorship and for movement organizations to focus on their programming more than the infrastructure required to accept tax-deductible donations. So again, this document or this image is all of the different kinds of fiscal sponsorship. Reviewing each one is outside the scope of this presentation, but I encourage you to get the book so that you can read up about all of them. Movement incubation, that is what we call our program because it is more than just fiscal sponsorship. So our sponsorship models, we do a Model A and a Model L. So with this Model A, there is no separate legal entity and the sponsor takes comprehensive responsibility for the project. We assume liability and paying all the project's bills directly. If staff members are paid, i.e. the project has staff members, then they become our staff members, staff of ABC. They are treated as employees of the sponsor, and if unpaid, they are the sponsor's volunteers. We have a sponsorship administrative fee of 10%, and the maximum timeline for this is 5 years. There is it's as if they're treated like a department in an organization. Like it would be your marketing department, for example. All of the grant agreements must be signed by the fiscal sponsor, and the employees are offered in benefits and insurances. The other model that I was mentioning was the Model L, the the new IRS rules favoring a 501(c)(3) fiscal sponsor that serves as the single member of a charitable LLC. The single member is treated as part of the sponsor, but a separate entity for liability reasons. They can accept grants in their own name. They can employ people, i.e., set up a bank account and have a payroll company work with them, or set up their own payroll and have their own EIN number on that. It is there is a sponsorship administrative fee of 8%, and the maximum timeline is indefinite. So the this allows you to operate more relatively independently. We provide, or we ask for quarterly reports that are financial and programmatic to help to review your progress and to identify any ways that we could be of help, and obviously to review as part of our compliance. So in between, this is kind of an option to be in between your own organization and a program project, as in the Model A. And this is where our process and our model really comes into play and shines. Sometimes people want the C3 for the independence, but they quickly realize how much administration is required to maintain it. If you're a small team or a solo team, that is a lot of work and can lead to burnout and or organization falling by the wayside and eventually losing C3 status due to the lack of upkeep. Model L allows you to operate your programming with guided financial support via the quarterly financial reconciliations, and the 990 is completed by the sponsor, i.e. us. You can start small with hiring and work on policies before you go fully into whatever kind of entity you end up being. So we have a unique set of offerings that go along with the Model A and Model L fiscal sponsorship. So here's how we believe movement organizations can be best set up for success. We call our grassroots action project an incubator. I'm sorry, I already mentioned this, that it's one of the services that we already, fiscal sponsorship is one of the services that we offer in a suite of services. So we do quarterly funder research. I'm a fundraising nerd, so it's super fun to find opportunities for our projects, especially since we recently got a set of new tools that help us help you even better. We will do the personal funder introductions if it makes sense, so that our capacity can be your capacity. We have a multi-channel giving platform. We work with Flipcause for fundraising. And as a project of ABC, you'd get your own logins and access to your donor lists and campaigns. You can even have teams raising funds for you if you run a peer-to-peer campaign. And we would absolutely support that as well and send it in our newsletters and such. We also provide you access we provide you access to an arts entrepreneurship learning platform. We work with Creative Study to provide an opportunity to learn from an extended network of experts. Some popular classes are Saving and Investing with Ian Fuller, co-founder and partner at West Fuller Advisors, or Business Entities with Luke Blackadder from the Arts and Business Council of Greater Boston. We also are one of the very few, unless they well, maybe not one of the very few, but we are one of the fiscal sponsors that allow for lobbying. We believe that it's critical to the work of movement organizing, changing the policies that disenfranchise people of color, LGBTQ folks, youth, and artists. We work with you to track the spending for, say it with me now, compliance. Model L is a much more equitable in terms of the money of the movement of in terms of the money of movements staying with the movement organizations more directly. So that's the equity focused sponsorship model. Most times fiscal sponsors do not have the same lived experience as people of color or disability communities or queer folks. And having the money so totally controlled under a model A can lead to a less liberatory experience. Regarding the custom financial infrastructure, we have in the past provided payment cards organized for a graduated project. So they wanted to distribute food money. So we went and found a vendor with just them, and set up processes, internal audit processes, and other internal controls that we could manage that project for them. And then we also had managed a joint fund that was donated to by two of our projects. So that was also something that we were able to provide. We are going to talk a little bit more about the custom organization development plan in just a minute. So we want folks to have as much infrastructure support before they have their C3 or C4, or in some cases, for profit, which we, of course, would be aligning with applicable tax laws before they're on their own. The cohort is generally for 5 years maximum, allowing us to invest in our fiscal partners while also facilitating their investment in each other, and maybe even having collaborative funds. And so this is the process. So we have an introduction, emailing folks may email ABC staff to speak about their project. Usually we get the inquiries, but sometimes we reach out. There have been several fiscal sponsors closing their programs or completely dissolving due to a series of things that are not for this session, but it's COVID and donor fatigue and all of there's a lot of things. If you're interested in nerding out about the landscape with me, feel free to email me. My assistant will put the email in the chat, so you can do so. Also, we have an RFP out for our new cohort on our website, so please do check that link out as well. There is an application. Upon confirmation of alignment, we have a program application. That application is available on our website. Our board approves all of our project partners, and we know what they're looking for. So we will gladly help you present yourself in the best light with the application. And then in the development phase, we as a staff will meet with you to create a development plan outlining your trajectory for the growth of your programming, operations, and budget for a minimum of 2 years and up to 5 years, along with support services provided by ABC. So this plan is critical in governing our relationship moving forward. It is included in the fiscal sponsorship agreement as an exhibit and helps us all stay on track regarding your needs and the services in support of them. Then we have approval. Our staff presents to the board. If the board approves, then they may provide feedback. Even if they don't approve, they would still provide feedback, and we share that with the project. If all the concerns are resolved, the project enters the trial period, a Model A fiscal sponsorship. In the case that our board does not approve of a project, we still provide the feedback and we will help you edit your application so that potentially you could be approved in the next round. In the trial period, the project enters the Model A fiscal sponsorship. This phase may last 5 years, because I just previously said 5 years. This is for if people really need for the 5 years, is if they really need a lot of investments in order to be independent. And so there is that flexibility for folks to come in and have that 1 to 2 year period as an A and then move to an L, or they may be a Model A the entire period, depending upon their needs and what their development plan has said. We have meetings every other week with our projects to discuss progress and provide support. We have quarterly meetings with me on business strategy and our CFO on financial planning, budgeting, projections, or whatever you might need. And so by the end of year 2 or 3, it's usually quite clear which direction the organization wants to go. Long-term partnership as a Model L project indefinitely, or a goal toward independence at or before the 5-year mark. In the same way, we will help you transition from A to L, we will help you go independent. That could mean bylaws, incorporation forms, help, or depending upon the direction, traversing from a C3 to another kind of entity. And so in the long-term partnership, we want to make sure that folks have in the Model L, they have basic operations manual, a program plan with program budgets, operating budget, financial management, handbook with compliance and fundraising systems. That's what we see as able to be independent and stable. Okay. And there are, as I said before, there are financial and programmatic reports to ABC for oversight. So we actually have 3 different kinds of priority partnerships that we're looking for. It's in our RFP, but we're just going to go over how we categorize them and some past partners. So first, we support youth movement groups as our incubated partners. Excuse me. The founder or executive director is under 30 years old, or the focus is primarily on youth, ages 12 to 18, and adults 18 to 30 in a continuum of services. And then also that program improves the material conditions for the audience. So housing, physical or mental health, access to higher education, food security, or workforce preparedness. Our past partners are Black Village Arts and Educated Little Monsters in this category. And both of them were out of Brooklyn. The second category of priority partnerships are creator economic prosperity organizations. They focus on increasing the fair take-home pay for creatives and makers of color, and they provide mentorship or career development resources for the creative economy. They facilitate economic organizing for creatives to retain the economic value of their cultural capital. And so our past graduates include the Women of Color in the Arts, the Era Footwork Collective. Women of Color in the Arts is out of Houston. The Era Footwork Collective is in Chicago, and Brown Art Inc. is in Boston. And our final priority group are LGBTQ plus movement organizations. So the founder or executive director is a member of the LGBTQ community. They serve more than 60% LGBTQ plus community members, and they improve the material conditions for their audience. Again, housing, physical or mental health, food security, access to higher education or workforce preparedness. Our past partners are For the Girls. They are out of Brooklyn, I believe, and the Transgender Education Foundation out of Birmingham and San Francisco, because they had a co-leadership model. So, upcoming with ABC, we have the finance skills that you need to know as an executive director. It's coming next week with our CFO. And then the week after that, we have volunteer management with limited resources with our executive assistant. And so, as I mentioned before, there is a full fundraising handbook in May that's coming out. And there's so much that you can learn from this: creating a grant calendar, board and volunteer outreach, list building game. There's institutional giving, corporate and individual, measurable goals and metrics, so much. And we will be sending a recap of this presentation after in the next day or two. In the recap, you'll receive a link to this video on YouTube, the RFP for our second cohort of Grassroots Action Project organizations. Please share widely if you know of anyone who might benefit from our programming. A short review and analysis of fiscal sponsorship literature that we conducted, I believe, last year. And then a link to fiscal sponsorship, 6 ways to do it right. Thank you so much for attending this presentation. I will take questions if anybody has any.
Small group today, so I guess it's going to be quiet.
Okay. That is fine. I will, I guess I don't have anything else to share. If anybody has any questions or anything that comes to mind, you can email me. My email is on the screen, kat@artsbusinesscollaborative.org.
I will end the recording at this point. Thank you all, and we appreciate you being here.
Oh, there's a question. I'm sorry. So if you already have
chat, that was me.
I'm sorry?
I said there was one in the chat that was me responding to something, but
Well, Aaron Griggs asked a question.
oh, I didn't. That just popped up for
It
me. I
just popped up.
apologize.
Yep.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Like as we were talking, it popped up.
As
I
you
have
were
A
talking.
pop-up, it just
Sorry,
came
Aaron.
for me as well.
So if you already have a fiscal sponsorship with another organization, can you be a Model A fiscal sponsorship with another organization? I think it really depends upon the agreement that you have. There are some agreements that say that you can only have one fiscal sponsor, but it's up to their review or discretion or something of that, like some language like that. I think that you'd have to really also organize like what you would use one fiscal sponsor for versus you would use the other one for, and have a larger sort of conversation about that. There would have to be a good reason that you would be using two fiscal sponsors as opposed to just either switching or yeah, I mean switching. That doesn't, I don't think that there's another pathway there. Josh, do you have any thoughts on this?
You touched a little bit on what I was gonna say. The only way I can really see it happening in a way that like a fiscal sponsor will let you, and also in a way that, and frankly for the safety of the fiscal sponsor, is maybe if your uh organization is large enough that you have different programs, and now you're separating out your programs. I'm not sure why you would want to do this, but if you felt like that was a solution for you, uh, technically you could do that, but you're essentially at that point splitting your organization into two organizations because you're going to have to put one under one 990, one under another
Yeah,
990, and separate all the finances, and you can't
it's a lot of work.
like cross contaminate the money between the two. So it makes it much more difficult, a lot more tracking. But that's the only way that I really see it as feasible. Yeah, but again, I'm not sure why you would. I can't think of a reason why you would do it, right? But that would be the only way I could see it happening.
Yeah, I think that I mean, I guess an argument that could be made for it is if you had a fiscal sponsor in a specific location and you had one program that was really focused on that location, and the culture of that funding landscape was only to fund people whose addresses were in that location. That might make sense, because then you kind of do have to split your organization in that way to be able to compete for those grants. But
And then all your workers would then be part-time, and you would have to like keep track of what organization they're doing the work for.
exactly. Okay, I believe that is it. Carolyn, you were going to say something before, and then I
Nope,
cut.
that was it. I was just saying I would stop the recording whenever you were ready.
Okay, I'm ready.